Hello and welcome back to another Doctor Who action figure review. In today's review I am taking a look at the upcoming B&M exclusive Unit 1971 set from the Claws of Axos, featuring Sgt Benton, the Brigadier and Captain Yates. So first of all, this set was sent to me via Al Juar for review, so a massive thank you to Al. He's also sent me a few of the other sets as well, so expect some more reviews on the way soon. But for now, let's get on with the review of these guys. And I've got to say, when these were first revealed, I was just completely blown away. Never in my wildest dreams did I think we would ever get Sgt Benton and Captain Yates. And as a kid growing up watching Doctor Who in the mid-90s, for me, Doctor Who was very much the Tom Baker era and the John Pertwee era. So I have a huge amount of affection for the Unit family. Honestly, my 4-year-old self is just so jealous right now that he's missed out on the opportunity to play with figures of Sgt Benton and Captain Yates and the Brigadier as well. Obviously stuff that we didn't get when Dapol were in control of Doctor Who toys. So let's start off by taking a look at the packaging. The figures come packaged in the now familiar window box featuring the blue and white classic series style guide. There has been some slight alterations to the packaging. Last year the top of the boxes had a sort of big cardboard strip across it, and I think I actually mentioned in one of my first reviews for the B&M sets last year that I thought that wasn't so great because you can't really see the figures inside very well. It's sort of locked off the heads, so it's nice to see that they've changed that. And then on the back of the box we get treated to a look at the figures themselves, the publicity images that were first released of these figures. And interesting to note, it refers to Sgt Benton as John Benton, which I think is a name that was developed for Benton in the sort of expanded universe in the novels and stuff. Not sure he was ever referred to as John in the TV series. And so here they are out of the packaging. So first of all, I mean, they look amazing. They look so good. They've done an amazing job, and obviously, as you can tell straight away, there's a lot of new tooling going on here, and some surprising tooling that you probably won't notice on a first glance. The obvious things is, of course, we now have new head sculpts, 2 new head sculpts. We started to see last year with the B&M sets with the Sontarans and Harry Sullivan, but this year they've really gone full on with new head sculpts on existing bodies, which I absolutely love. It means we get to see lots of new characters. It's incredibly exciting. So for this set, the base figure is basically the original Brigadier in the uniform from the 3 Doctors set. And what they've done is they've tooled new PVC pieces for the torso, which are then used for Benton and Yates. So if we start off with jolly old Sgt Benton, looking at the head sculpt, I mean, it's a dead ringer for John Levine. They've really captured him. Just superb. Such a great sculpt. The paint apps here are also really well done. There's also something that I noticed on the newest publicity images, and I thought it was a bit of Photoshop trickery, but it does almost seem like there is a bit of a pinkish hue in the chin and the cheeks. Not sure if that's just my eyes seeing things that aren't there, but I've seen a few pictures of people who have these in hand, and it does seem to be the case that they've really upped their game with the paint apps on these figures. There's no paint bleeds or anything like that. The paint job is really neat and crisp, particularly on the unit badge. As you can see there, it's got unit printed on it. A massive step up from the unit badge that we saw on that 1970 Brigadier's figure. So overall the head sculpt's fantastic, and the beret that he is wearing is a different sculpt from Yates and a different sculpt from the Brigadier's, so that's worth noting as well. And for those wondering, yes, the head is a plug, so there is a peg that plugs into the bottom of Benton's head, and that is the same on all of these figures, which means that the Brigadier has had a bit of new tooling. The original Claws of Axos version was on a peg. This one is now a plug. So it means you can swap the heads around should you so wish. And I guess this will allow for a lot more versions of these characters in the future. So looking back on Benton, at the torso piece, the sculpting here is superb. They have done an incredibly good job with this. It looks basically a dead ringer for Benton's uniform in the Claws of Axos and a lot of those 1971 unit stories. Like I said, the detail's very impressive. You can see that the scarf around his neck, you've got that sort of net pattern that's on there. That's in the sculpt but also highlighted with the paint apps, and it looks really great, very realistic. All of the seams and the buttons on the pockets and stuff are very well done, particularly on the pouches and on the belts. All the buckles and the clasps, they've all been painted silver. And then they've given it this sort of a light stony wash over the top, which just highlights the sculpt and it just gives it a bit of texture. It makes it feel like it's been worn in battle. It's a bit tough and rough. And it's the same on the back as well. There's even more details on the back, more of these buckles and pouches and things. It's incredibly well done. So the arms, like I said, this is going back to that original Brigadier figure. You can just see the seams off of the Brigadier's jacket. Again, the paint apps here, really good. Obviously, they've still got that sort of stony wash, like I mentioned, on the jacket. That continues onto the sleeves. But what they've also got is the unit badge on Benton's left arm. Again, looks very neat and crisp. But he also has his sergeant's insignia on both of his arms as well. So that's really cool that they've kept that. And then looking at the gloves, these are just the same officer's gloves that the other Brigadier figures have used, and those have been painted brown, much like the gloves worn by the Brigadier. Benton actually didn't wear gloves in that story. I know it's sad that I know that, but who cares? And then down to the legs, same officer's trousers like the Brigadier figure, again with added wash to give it that bit of texture, to make it look a bit worn and ready. And then you have the black shoes, which are a sort of a glossy black, and then a dull grey for the soles, and they've just given that another grey wash over the top to make it look like they've been worn. And he does come with an accessory, which is this big assault rifle type thing. Now, I know that this is a bit of an anachronistic accessory. This is not the sort of weapon that they would have been using back in 1971, and this seems to have upset quite a few people. I've seen a few people on Twitter be like, well, they've got the gun wrong, so it should be blah, 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 blah. Who the hell cares? You're really going to complain about a bloody rifle when you've got a figure of Sgt Benton? The fact that he comes with an accessory, good enough. I would have been happy just to take the figure as it is. Maybe one day they'll be able to have the tooling to make a different gun and you can use that instead. But for now, I'm just incredibly grateful that we have an incredible figure of Sgt Benton. So then if we move over to Captain Yates, the body is exactly the same. Something worth mentioning though, however, is that Captain Yates didn't wear the pouches in that story. Again, it's just to use the same body, keep the costs down. Do I care? Not really. He looks great. I'm not going to worry about that, but just worth mentioning. And Captain Yates does wear the gloves in that story, so that's fine if you're interested in that. But then looking at the head sculpt, it's a great sculpt again. I don't think it's quite as good as Sgt Benton, and I don't think that is a complaint against the sculpt. I think that's just because Richard Franklin doesn't have quite a distinguishable face as John Levine, but it's still very obvious who it's meant to be. The beret sculpt, like I said, is different, so I saw a few people saying, oh, if they shared the same hat between different figures. No, it's its own entire sculpt. Again, really nice paint apps here on the eyes and on the badge, really neat and crisp. One thing worth noting though, however, if you watched my review of the History of the Daleks set that I posted the other day, I was talking about how some of the hemispheres on the Daleks were touched up and the colours were a bit off. Same thing has happened here on Yates's beret. The touched up part here is a slightly lighter colour and also kind of a bit glossy compared to the rest of the beret. At the torso piece, again, all the same stuff, all the same paint apps. Really well done. Looks superb. The paint apps do differ, however. He obviously doesn't have the sergeant's insignia on his arms, which is nice, but on his epaulets, he does have these 3 silver diamonds on either side, again, to show his rank. So very cool that they've kept that in there as well. Something that, you know, they didn't have to do it, but they've really pushed the envelope trying to get as many of those details in the paint apps as possible. And like I said, I think they've really knocked these chaps out of the park. Again, he comes with the rifle. You can complain about it as much as you want. Who cares? So then we move on to the Brigadier. So this is the Brigadier figure that we first saw released in the Claws of Axos Forbidden Planet set. It has had a few updates in terms of paint. Obviously, I've already mentioned that the head has been retooled, so it's now a plug, not a peg. And then the paint apps on the head, these are slightly different. The moustache and the hair is now more of a brown rather than the jet black of the original figure. But the paint apps here are really nice. He's also slightly darker in skin tone compared to the original figure. He's a bit more pinky, I should say, just like Benton and Yates. What this one doesn't have, unlike the original one, is it doesn't have the checkered pattern in the middle of the badge. The overall colours have been tweaked slightly. The beret and like the patches on the shoulders and the elbows and the belt, they've become slightly more green. they've sort of lost some of their beige hue, so they're more of a green colour, which is fine. They've also added a darker wash to the jumper, which really makes the sculpt of the ridges of the jumper really stand out, which I really like. And of course, you've got all of the other accented parts, like the gold medals with the red portions in the crowns. That's really nicely done. And of course, on the buckles, not just on the front of the belt, but on the back as well. And of course, you've got the holster too. Again, unlike the original figure, he's now wearing brown gloves rather than black. I think that's more accurate to what he wore in the show or in that serial, so that's good. He comes with an accessory, he comes with his little Beretta or whatever type of gun this is. This actually is the right weapon, so people need not get their pitchforks out just yet. And then the trousers, these are also a different colour. They're more of a darker green, closer to what the other guys are wearing, which I think is actually closer to what he wore in that season. So that's good, that's a nice change. And they've given it a black wash over the top just to make it look a bit dirty and worn, etc. And he has the same type of shoes as the other guys, just without the heavy wash. So he may have dirty trousers, but the Brigadier sure knows how to keep his shoes clean. And so that's it, that's Brigadier. Again, a really great figure. I mean, comparing it to the original figure, I think the original head sculpt, you can see more of the details of the sculpt compared to the new one. The new one is slightly softer. That could be a paint apps thing. But overall, I think, you know, it's a nice re-release, particularly for people who missed out on that original Claws of Axos set. So in terms of articulation, they're all the same figure, pretty much. So they all have the same articulation. So I'm just going to use Sgt Benton to go through this. So they all have articulation at the neck. So you can turn from side to side. The shoulders can swivel forwards, backwards, and they're also on those half ball joints, so they can come out to the sides as well, which is great. There's articulation at the bicep, so they can twist, swivel joints at the elbows, articulation at the wrists, and then there's articulation at the waist, so they can swivel, at the hips, so they can go forward and out to the sides, like so. The thighs, again, swivels there, and articulation at the knee, so they can pivot back and forth. It just amazes me that we now have the ability to do this and assemble the entire unit family. So this is as close as the Claws of Axos as we're going to get. I know the John Pertwee's not quite right with the cravat, but who knows? If they're retooling the Brigadier's head, perhaps they might one day retool the John Pertwee head so we can get some of those open shirts John Pertwee's, the red jacket one. Fingers crossed. Look at this, this is just incredible. Just what a joy to have all these characters as figures for the first time in, well, almost 50 years. It's just absolutely amazing. My younger self is incredibly jealous. So once again, a massive thank you to Al for passing these on to me. I think this is probably one of the best Doctor Who sets we've had in years. I mean, last year's B&M sets were amazing, but this is just knocks it out of the park. And I'm probably being slightly biased because I love the John Pertwee era so much. I know that it won't be for everybody, but for me, this is just fab. This is just everything I've ever wanted from the Doctor Who toy range, and something that I never thought we'd get. So just amazing, absolutely amazing. I can't wait to put them in the cabinets when lockdown's over and see them all together properly. So thank you all for watching, and stay tuned to the channel because I will be reviewing some of the other B&M sets very soon before they come out in the shops. These guys will be out in B&M stores exclusively in July, priced at about £20, I think. Hopefully see you soon for some more reviews, and happy hunting looking for these figures. See you soon. Bye bye.